Westernspring television, ours it is.
Good evening and welcome to Spring Global on Westernspring Television. Now the headlines. President Muhammadu Buhari takes President-elect Bola Tinubu on a familiarization tour of Aso Rock. FBI files reveals plots to kill Queen Elizabeth II during her 1983 visit to America. Pakistan slaps a travel ban on former Prime Minister Imran Khan amid standoff with military. My name is Okpayemuni. We begin in Nigeria, where President Muhammadu Buhari took the President-elect Bola Tinubu on a familiarization tour of the presidential villa, Abuja. Buhari and Tinubu arrived at the press gallery at around 1:18 p.m., shortly after observing the Juma prayers at the Aso Villa Mosque. This comes barely 24 hours after the president conferred upon Tinubu the national honor of Grand Commander of the Federal Republic. Yesterday, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo had taken the Vice President-elect Kashim Shettima on a tour of the VP wing of the State House. Both leaders exchanged documents ahead of the official handover of power on Monday, May 29, 2023. Similarly, President Muhammadu Buhari has today received an asset declaration form from the Code of Conduct Bureau at the State House. The form was presented to the President inside the presidential villa by the CCB chairman, Professor Muhammad Isa, who led other members of the Bureau to his office. This is in compliance with the provision of the Constitution, which stipulates that all public officers shall declare their assets and liabilities on the assumption of office and at the end of their tenure of office. The President-elect Senator Bola Tinubu, the Vice President-elect Kashim Shettima, and 28 incoming governors and their cabinet members and state assembly members are also expected to submit their assets forms to the CCB. Outside Nigeria, the militant Al-Shabaab group this morning attacked a Ugandan troops base of the African Union Transition Mission, ATMIS, in Bula Maria district in Lower Shabelle region in Somalia. The attack began shortly after morning prayers. It started with a large explosion believed to be an explosive-laden vehicle. Bula Maria is about 110 kilometers, 68 miles from the capital, Mogadishu. Residents reported that after the big explosion, two more explosions occurred in the camp before a fight started between the Ugandan troops and the attackers. Al-Shabaab said they captured the camp and killed dozens of ATMIS soldiers, but there has been no independent confirmation of the group's claim. ATMIS says its forces are currently assessing the security situation in the area, but no word yet from the Somali government regarding the attack. Outside Africa, Queen Elizabeth II faced a potential assassination threat during a 1983 visit to the U.S., newly released FBI documents show. The Federal Bureau of Investigation has released a cache of files relating to the late Queen's travels to the U.S. following her death last year. They show how the FBI, which helped secure the monarch's safety during a visit, worried about IRA threats. The assassination threat was made to a police officer in San Francisco. According to the file, an officer who frequented an Irish pub in San Francisco warned federal agents about a call from a man he had met at the venue. The threat came on 4 February 1983, about a month ahead of Queen Elizabeth II and her husband Philip's visit to California. Still in the UK, 11 people have been arrested in County Tyrone, Northern Ireland, over the attempted murder of senior detective John Caldwell. Police have also released new CCTV footage and photographs of vehicles they believe were used in the attack. That Chief Inspector Caldwell was shot while Deputy Chief Inspector Caldwell was shot while putting footballs into his car at a sports complex in Omagh on 22nd of February. Deputy Chief Superintendent Corrigan said a search and arrest operation in Omagh and Coal Island in County Tyrone marked a significant development in the investigation. He stated 9 men and 2 women aged between 21 and 72 were detained under the Terrorism Act this morning.
My investigation has progressed, and I now believe a black Mercedes-Benz C-Class 4-door saloon, a 2007 to 8 to 2014 model, was used as an operational vehicle by the new IRA both before and immediately after the attack, when it was used to transport the gunmen and others away from the site of the burned out Ford Fiesta in Reculver Road, referred to as Fiesta 1. I'm appealing for information about who was in this black Mercedes vehicle, where it was before the shooting, and where it went afterwards. I know it travelled in a convoy on the Drumnachilly Road, heading towards Omagh at 17:43 hours on the 22nd, with the 2 blue Ford Fiestas before the attack took place. I'm also releasing new images of the 2 Ford Fiestas. The new photograph of Fiesta 1 shows it leaving Barrack Street in Coal Island at 16:55 hours on the afternoon of the shooting and travelling to Omagh. Its original registration number was MGZ6242 and was fitted with false plates FRZ8414 prior to the attack. We know this vehicle left the sports complex.
To the Russia-Ukraine war, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says at least 1 person has been killed and 23 wounded in a Russian missile strike on a medical clinic in the city of Dnipro. Mr. Zelensky, writing on the Telegram messaging app, said Russia once again confirmed its status as fighters against everything humane and honest. Earlier, Ukrainian officials said air defense systems had shot down 10 missiles and more than 20 drones in overnight attacks on the capital, Kiev, as well as Dnipro and eastern regions. Russia's Ministry of Defense says it carried out an overnight attack on Ukrainian ammunition depots, adding that all target of a strike had been achieved. Meanwhile, Russian private military group Wagner may be operating via Mali and other African countries to hide its attempts to get military equipment for Moscow's war against Ukraine. A Treasury Department statement said the group's employees may have been trying to procure mines, drones, radar, and other equipment for the war. Wagner is known to be operating in some African countries, including Mali. The statement also announced the sanctions on Wagner's Mali chief Ivan Maslov. Wagner has led Russia's offensive in the Ukrainian city of Bakhmut, though it began withdrawing yesterday in order to hand control over to the Russian military. The group has been providing Mali's military government with assistance in the fight against Islamist insurgents. In the meantime, Japan has announced additional sanctions on Russia after the Group of 7 summit the country hosted last week agreed to step up measures to punish Moscow over its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. According to a foreign ministry statement released today, Japan will freeze the assets of 78 groups and 17 individuals, including army officers, in Russia and ban exports to 80 Russian entities, such as military-affiliated research labs. Japan will also ban providing construction and engineering services to Russia, although the details of the measure will be announced at a later date. A trade ministry statement said. Chief Cabinet Secretary Hirokazu Matsuno, Tokyo's top government spokesperson, also condemned Russia's move to deploy tactical nuclear weapons in Belarus, saying it would further intensify the situation. Elsewhere in Europe, including a newborn baby and pregnant women, has disappeared in the central Mediterranean, according to two humanitarian organizations. Lamphone, a group that picks up calls from refugee vessels in distress, said this morning that it had lost contact with the boat on Wednesday morning. It disclosed that at the time, the boat was adrift with no working engine in ice seas, about 200 miles north of the Libyan port of Benghazi and more than 250 miles away from Malta and Italy's southern island of Sicily. A spokesperson for Italian NGO Emergency said search was continuing, adding that people on board might have been picked up by another boat or may have managed to fix their engine and continue sailing towards Sicily. Italy's Coast Guard reported the rescue of 423 people and 671 people in two separate operations in Italian search and rescue waters, but a Lamphone said they were unrelated to the missing boat. In the Middle East, Iran and Belgium have agreed to free individuals detained in each other's countries in a deal facilitated by Oman. In a statement this morning, the Omani Foreign Ministry said the people were transported from Tehran and Brussels to Muscat in preparation for the return to their respective countries. The ministry did not identify the prisoners being swapped. However, Belgian Prime Minister Alexander De Croo said in a statement that aid worker Olivier van der Kastle had been freed. Iranian state media repeated Oman's announcement without offering further details. Iran has been wanting Belgium to return a diplomat convicted of planning a bombing in France. You're watching Spring Global on Westernspring Television. We'll be right back after this break.
Dramatist, playwright, and icon of Yoruba thematic arts, Duro Ladipo was born December 18, 1931 in Osogbo, southwest Nigeria. His clergyman father christened him Timothy. His other names, Duro Dola, Duro Shomo, Duro Rike, reflected his persona and the circumstances that surrounded his birth. The legendary stage actor had in several public fora identified himself as one of the greatest abikus born to die in this world. Family records reveal how he was born and died 13 times. The intertwining names he bore thus lent credence to his spiritism. Duro Ladipo was one of the best known and world-acclaimed Yoruba dramatists to emerge from post-colonial Africa. His notable works Obakoso, Obawaja, and Moremi took him beyond Africa to several parts of the world. By the time Duro Ladipo died on 11 March 1978, Nigeria's first cultural ambassador had acquired a towering image as an artist whose works adorned the frontage of Trenchard Hall, University of Ibadan. Westernspring Television identifies Duro Ladipo as a major character in history.
Welcome back on Spring Global on Westernspring Television. Now to the rest of the stories. In Asia, Pakistan's government has restricted former Prime Minister Imran Khan his wife, and hundreds of political aides from traveling abroad amid a standoff with the country's powerful military. The Federal Investigation Agency, FIA, responsible for immigration and border control, put Mr. Khan's name on the no-fly list. At least 2 officials confirmed to DPA News Agency this morning. According to Arrow officials, Mr. Khan's wife, Bushra Bibi, and more than 500 leaders and members of his Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf party were also added to the list. However, Mr. Khan this morning thanked the government for putting him on the no-fly list. It disclosed that he doesn't have any plans to travel abroad because he neither has any properties or businesses abroad, nor a bank account outside the country. He tweeted in an apparent dig at politicians belonging to Pakistan's ruling alliance who allegedly own homes abroad. Still in Asia, a Chinese research ship and 5 escort vessels were in Vietnam's exclusive economic zone today, close to gas blocks operated by Russian firms in the South China Sea, a day after Vietnam urged the ships to leave. The Chinese vessel Chiang Yang Hong 10 began operating in Vietnam's east on May 7, representing the most significant incursion since 2019. The 2019 standoff between the two nations lasted for more than 3 months and largely targeted a block then operated by Russian state oil firm Rosneft. China claims most of the energy-rich waters of the South China Sea, including areas that are within Vietnam's economic zone. Moving on, a passenger opened an emergency exit door during a domestic flight in South Korea, causing air to gust inside the cabin before the plane landed safely. The commercial aircraft was minutes from landing this morning when the passenger sitting next to the emergency door opened a cover and pulled a lever, opening it with the aircraft about 656 feet above the ground. The Transport Ministry said people on board the Asiana Airlines Airbus A321 aircraft failed to stop the man from opening the door. Video footage apparently taken by a person on board and posted on social media showed passengers being whipped about by air rushing into the cabin. The unexpected opening caused some passengers to suffer breathing difficulties, and 9 people were taken to hospital after the landing, Asiana said, adding that there were no major injuries or damage. According to the airline police have arrested the unidentified person who opened the door, and his motive was unclear. In the United States, calls are growing for an officer to be fired and charged after an 11-year-old in Mississippi who called 911 for help was shot by police. The incident was once again brought to the fore the trend of fatal police shootings in the United States. Daniel Odeyemi completes this report.
After all the attention the Black Lives Matter-led racial justice movement generated after George Floyd's death in 2020, new data show that the number of black people killed by police has actually increased over the last 3 years. According to Mapping Police Violence, a non-profit group that tracks police shootings, black people will account for 13% of the United States population, accounted for 27% of those fatally shot and killed by police in 2021 alone. This means black people are twice as likely as white people to be shot and killed by police officers. The most recent is an 11-year-old boy who was shot by an officer after calling the police for help in the United States of America. Mississippi police arrived at Darian Murray's home responding to a domestic disturbance call placed by the boy, then shot him in the chest, according to his mother, Nakala Murray. She said the boy asked her, "What did I do?" after being shot. Murray explained at a rally earlier in the week that the father of another of her children had showed up at her house and was acting irate, prompting her to instruct her son to call the police. She revealed what transpired after the police arrived at the scene.
Once he was like, "Come out with your hands up," at that moment is when my son came out. You're asking someone to come out with their hands up, but you're shooting. I don't understand.
Aderian was rushed to the University of Mississippi Medical Center where he was treated for a collapsed lung, fractured ribs, and a lacerated liver. He was given a chest tube and placed on a ventilator. The boy is now recovering at home after being released. The officer involved, identified as Greg Kappers, has been placed on leave as the shooting is investigated by the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation. Mother of the victim, Nakalamuri, has asked for the officer to be fired and charged. At the sit-in protest at Indianola City Hall on Thursday, Ms. Murray and her family's lawyer, Carlos Moore, alongside a group of protesters, called for accountability in the shooting and asked officials to take further action.
We're hoping that the city of Indianola immediately terminates Officer Greg Capers. There's no justification for shooting this unarmed 11-year-old black young child in the chest. So we want Capers gone. Suspension with pay is a vacation with pay after doing something so egregious. And so we want the chief of police also, Ronald Sampson, immediately terminated. We also want to get the body camera footage, and we want prosecution for aggravated assault.
Moore said Aderian did everything right in the morning of the shooting and described him as a good student who obeyed his mother's request that he call the police for assistance. He argued it was not possible for the officer to have mistaken the young boy for an adult.
It's not possible for a reasonable trained cop to misperceive a child as a man. This child looks like a child. He's very short in stature. He's very thin. There's no way he could have been confused for a man.
At a rally planned for tomorrow, the family attorney and Nakalamuri will demand the firing of the officer and the release of body camera footage from the incident. According to Mr. Moore, Indianola Police Department has so far denied the footage request due to the ongoing investigation. Meanwhile, the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation said it is currently assessing the critical incident and gathering evidence and will submit its findings to the state attorney general's office. Several resolutions have been recommended to these menace, including more training for officers and cutting police funding in many cities. It should be recalled that in January, a 29-year-old black man, Tyre Nichols, was killed by officers of the Memphis Police Department in Tennessee during a traffic stop amidst several others. It is, however, hoped that a Aderian Morris shooting will reignite discourse around the safety of black lives in America. Daniel Odeyemi, Westernspring Television.
In sport, Brentford striker Ivan Toney has been given a reduced ban from football after he was diagnosed with gambling addiction. Toney, aged 27, was banned for 8 months for breaking Football Association betting rules, including betting against his own team. A psychiatric expert who gave evidence to the FA's Regulatory Commission diagnosed Toney with a gambling addiction and concluded he needed help. As a result, the Commission reduced an 11-month sanction by 3 months. In its written reasons explaining its sanction, published today, the Commission said Toney had admitted repeatedly lying during his initial interviews with the FA. His ban was reduced to 11 months given he pleaded guilty to all 232 charges before being further reduced to reflect his diagnosed addiction. Still in the Premier League, Leicester boss Dean Smith has called on his players to only do what they can do to help the team get a result ahead of the final game of the season. He said that they have to play their part and then relying on others to help the team. But now they just have to concentrate on what they can do. Smith was speaking before his relegation-threatened side takes on West Ham, knowing anything apart from a win will see them go down. But a win and Everton losing their final game will see them remain in the league.
We were having to watch 2 other games and their results as well, because I think it was Watford at the time. If they'd have drew, I think they would have gone above us. So, we had to make sure that, we matched or bettered Watford's result at least. And, we had eyes on other games as well. We don't need to do that now. We just know simply we have to win the game, because if we don't, then we get relegated. No, not at all. I mean, my future was to come in for 7 weeks and 8 games, and that hasn't changed. So, my future is exactly the same. I think that's a question to have after the game, not before it.
Away from football, British cycling is to ban transgender women from the female category of its competitions following a 9-month review and consultation. under a new participation policy that the governing body said was predicated on fairness, revealing that such athletes will compete in an open category with men. The changes will prevent riders such as Emily Bridges potentially being part of the British women's team. British Cycling CEO John Dutton further stated that female races will be for those whose sex was assigned female at birth. He noted that research studies indicate that even with the suppression of testosterone, transgender women who transition post-puberty retain a performance advantage.
In the competitive policy, we will define the female category as the athletes who are female by sex at birth, and the open category available to all other riders.
Including trans women athletes?
Absolutely.
Why have you brought these changes in?
It was clear that we had to take another look at the policy from a consultation, listening to those that may be directly affected and impacted, but also the wider cycling community, to look at the medical research that is available at this point in time, and also to look at the legal aspects of any changes. So we've taken all of that work. I do appreciate it's taken us some time to get to this point, and during that period there has been some anxiety, some upset, and I am wholeheartedly empathetic to that situation. But today is about leadership, direction.
Before we end Spring Global, here's a recap of our top stories. President Muhammadu Buhari took the President-elect Bola Tinubu on the familiarization tour of the presidential villa. Queen Elizabeth II faced a potential assassination threat during the 1983 visit to the U.S., newly released FBI documents show. Pakistan's government has restricted former Prime Minister Imran Khan, his wife and hundreds of political aides from traveling abroad amid a standoff with the country's powerful military. You can follow us on our social media handles on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter at Westernspring Television. You can also watch us live on our YouTube channel at Westernspring Television. I am Opayamuni. Thanks for watching.